back to the Brotherhood Blitz, where rivalries are personal, dynasties are earned, and every snap means something. I'm here with my brother and co-host 49K, and we're breaking down the biggest moments, the toughest matchups, and the plays that changed everything.
A long time no see it's been a bit since we last recorded an episode.
It has been a bit. It's been 2 weeks. We didn't get to record one last week as we've both been busy. But to touch on that point, I want to congratulate you, brother, on your move and your moving into the new place. I know that's very exciting, and that's part of the reason and a big reason that we didn't get to record last week.
Yeah, no, I got into my own place. Well, technically my own place is with my sister and her boyfriend, but it's nice to finally have a place I can call my own in a way. And yeah, that has been a really big reason of why we didn't get to record last week, and also of why this week's episode is late. Is just with me trying to get quickly moved in as fast as I can to my new place.
Yeah, and I know, moving from where you were to where you are now, you got a huge jump in your internet speed. So I know that's very relieving to get, and I know you're excited about that. Excited about this episode. We're about to quickly go over these, last 2 weeks. Like we said, we've both been busy and you moving, so we don't really remember everything. So we're gonna quickly go over, these games and we'll touch base on the games for next week and our picks for that. Um, and like you said, this episode's late. It's on a Monday now, so players of the week are closed. There's no hit stick this week, so this episode's going to be pretty quick. But next week, we'll be back to our regular schedule.
Yep. So we'll get right into quickly going over week three, as that was the last week we didn't get to do. We'll start off with Michigan versus Maryland, where Maryland got a 36-31 victory, and that was Michigan's first loss on the season as well. You got North Carolina versus Georgia, where Georgia got a very close win over UNC, winning 38-35. Then you got Rutgers beating, at that point, rank one Texas and undefeated Texas 38-10. Hurt, I will say that. Ole Miss versus Hawaii, where Hawaii gets a 10-point victory over Ole Miss 34-24. You got USC beating Colorado 36-10. Mizzou getting their first win in program history 27-10 over Cincinnati. You got LSU beating Miami 34-24, and then you have Arkansas beating Florida State 29-22.
Yeah, some great games that week, and the two big, huge upsets. The Cincinnati and Mizzou, and Texas and Rutgers. Congratulations to both Rutgers and Missouri. Both huge wins on the season thus far. Going into week four, I'll quickly go over these. We had Hawaii beating Miami in a very close 1 point battle to keep Hawaii on top as Hawaii took down 35-34 on Miami. Going on, we had Rutgers losing to Arkansas 24-20. Florida State upsetting North Carolina 41-38. Ole Miss versus USC. Ole Miss coming out on top 51-45. Texas versus Michigan. Texas coming out on top on that one 37-17. Cincinnati versus Colorado. Colorado topping Cincinnati 43-38. Maryland versus Georgia with Maryland on top 31-23. LSU versus Missouri with LSU beating Missouri 30-21. And that was week four.
Yeah, a lot of interesting games. Obviously, Ole Miss with a huge victory over USC, a pretty commanding one for the most part. You had Georgia, who was the last undefeated team in the league, getting their first loss in the hands of Maryland. Uh, Arkansas beating Rutgers, who the previous week just beat ranked one, so that was really nice. And Florida State getting a pretty nice victory over a pretty good North Carolina team.
Yeah, so some great couple weeks we've had. Didn't get to really talk about them much. Like I said, once again, we were, both busy. But going forward, we'll be sure to be back on our regular schedule. hopefully getting these episodes out to y'all and breaking these games down better than we are in this episode. But that was week 3 and week 4. Like I said earlier, no player of the week, as you know, the voting is closed, so we can't see who was on the ballot anymore on the website. But yeah, brother, if you want to take us into a little bit of week 5 and what we think about these games coming up.
Yeah, I'll go ahead. I'll do the first half, and you can do the second half of the Week 5 slate. We got number 8 ranked USC going into Miami, who's ranked 10 in a light breeze contest.
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting matchup. I'm definitely going to be sure to watch this one. This one's going to be one of those that I don't really know. This is a big question mark for me. Miami still trying to figure things out in the season, even though on paper I believe they are the best roster. Um, and then
Correct, and it's not even close.
yeah, and taking on USC, who is also still trying to figure some things out, but they have uh, in some weeks this season and have not in some other weeks this season. So it's going to be interesting to see who comes out on top on this one. Um, but I think I'm going to pick Hawaii in this one.
Why?
Sorry, Miami. My eyes were looking at
Uh,
Hawaii when I said that.
I also agree. We're also getting to that point in the season where some of these teams are in a win now, like must win type of territory. Miami currently 1-3. Their only win coming in I believe it's week 2. Yeah, it was in week 2 against Arkansas in a 38-20 victory. But they proceeded to lose to Texas, LSU, and Hawaii. Then they got USC this week. I mean, their schedule up until around week 7, it isn't very easy. I do think that USC also coming off of a upset loss to Ole Miss last week might light a fire underneath the coaching staff and the team of the Trojans, but I'm also going to pick Miami in this one.
Next up, we got LSU versus Cincinnati, and this game it's going to be interesting. Cincinnati still trying to figure things out, and LSU seem to have figured things out. So this is a pretty easy choice as of now for me. I'm going to pick LSU in this one, but I do believe Cincinnati does have the roster. If Stamps over there at Cincinnati can figure things out, put a great game plan in, I could definitely see Cincinnati pulling this one off.
At Cincinnati on paper, looking at it right now, and actually going back to the Miami point, uh, they are not because they were, I think, 96 across the board. Now they're 94, 94, 95 after they've had a few players be switched out that were ghosted. So the gap between Miami and Texas isn't as far off as it was to start the season. But besides the point, Cincinnati, second best roster in the league, but currently do not have a win on the season. LSU at come after week 1, they have won every game since and have looked pretty good while doing it. In a light breeze game, I think the coaching difference between LSU and Cincy might be a big factor, and I'm going to go with LSU.
Yeah, I do agree. I think that light breeze is definitely going to be a factor in that game.
And going on to the next game, you got Ole Miss, ranked 6 Ole Miss taking on ranked 12 Colorado in a clear, calm weather game in which it could be a very interesting game in terms of I don't know how either of these teams are going to really look going into this with both having kind of shaky-ish starts to the season.
Yeah, but I will say, Ole Miss starting the season, I think they were pre-season ranked 12, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere around there, and they have climbed up the ranks to rank 6 now, which is the highest they've ever been ranked. So congratulations to Ole Miss, and I think they're going to continue that climbing after this game, and I think they're going to beat Colorado. But it is a great matchup, and this is the VGL, so never know.
Yeah, that's an understatement. I mean, every week is and so hard to gauge what teams should win versus who actually ends up winning. Colorado intrigues me a lot just because of how they have looked like dominant in some weeks, and then in some weeks they haven't looked the best. I mean, they won against Florida State, and then they lost against Rutgers and USC in back-to-back games. You know, lost by 11 to Rutgers, 26 to USC. Then they beat Cincinnati by 5. But Colorado's upcoming schedule, Ole Miss, LSU, Miami, Hawaii, and then you end the season with Mizzou. I mean, their stretch on their schedule is pretty tough. So if they can get a win against Ole Miss, that could help them get them a big win to kind of help them get some votes to make playoffs come into the season if they continue this trend. But I'm also going to pick Ole Miss.
Yeah, continuing on your point of the remaining of Colorado's schedule, this is, I wouldn't say a must win because they are 2-2 on the season, but like you said, the rest of their schedule isn't easy. Coming up after Ole Miss, they got LSU, they got Miami, they got Hawaii. Those three games are not going to be easy for Colorado, and you know, let's just go ahead and say, they lose those three games. That leaves Ole Miss and Mizzou, in which they're gonna need both of those wins if they want a shot at playoffs. So you know, you don't want to say they're gonna lose, to those three games, but if they lose to Ole Miss here, that just makes it even that much harder to secure a playoff spot. In which that means they're gonna have to get at least one win against LSU, Miami, or Hawaii.
And I'll finish that off as well. I would like to think that Colorado needs to win at least 2 of those games before Week 9 to have those quality wins.
And also, week 9 Missouri, that's not an easy win either. You can't just go ahead and write a win on week 9 for them, as Mizzou
No.
is starting to figure things out, and they got one win now. Um, so it's only a matter of time before they start to rack up some wins.
And going on to the next game, you have number 5 ranked Georgia taking on number 2 ranked Texas in a clear, calm weather in Austin.
Yeah, just keep this one short and sweet, as we're both coaches for Texas. Yeah, Texas coming off, a great win against Michigan, changing playbooks. They're in a new playbook now, taking on Georgia, who has been looking phenomenal this season, just coming off their first loss on the season against Maryland. So um, who knows? Georgia's going to be, pretty upset after their first loss. They're going to be looking to revenge themselves. So it's going to be an interesting matchup, but obviously I'm going to pick Texas.
I'm picking Texas as well. Like you said, Georgia's looked pretty dominant up until last week with getting their first loss. I think they're gonna come out guns blazing and give us, a run for our money as they've been scoring and their defensive line, their front 7 has been elite.
Going on, we have Hawaii taking on Missouri, in which Missouri has kept games close this season against pretty good teams. Um, so it's a great matchup. You know, they got the win against Cincy. Um, a somewhat close game against Florida State, who has looked pretty decent this season. Um, so
They had a close game against LSU last week
yeah, a pretty close game
for
against
the most
LSU,
part.
who is arguably a top team in the league right now. Um, it's an interesting matchup. I wouldn't count them out totally. Um, like we said earlier, it is VGL. Anything can happen. You just need, to be good that one night in the week, and Mizzou can definitely do that. And it'd be interesting to see what happens. But to give a pick on the game, I am going to take Hawaii.
I'm also going to pick Hawaii, but I believe if Mizzou was happen to get a victory, this would be the biggest upset in VGL history, with rank 1 losing to rank 15.
I do think that would be correct. Yeah.
We're going on to the next game. We have number 4 ranked Maryland taking number 13th ranked Florida State, in which I'm actually very excited for this game to see, can Florida State continue their rushing dominance on the league, or is Maryland gonna stifle that attack, who also has a pretty great rushing attack their own.
Yeah, it's going to be great. I'm very excited for this game, and I actually have pretty interesting pick on this one. Is I'm going to pick Florida State in this game. Um,
I
you know,
also picked Florida State.
I think, yeah, I think just Johnny Gray Jr. Matched up with Rashad Mr. Vimy. It's just them two together on this Florida State team has looked dominant this season, and I think they're going to continue that this game and rack up some rushing yards against Maryland.
And it's not to say Maryland isn't a great team. They're ranked 4 for a reason. I mean, they just beat Georgia, and they have looked pretty great. They only have one loss on the season as well. It just intrigues me that Florida State, obviously they're running the ball, so time of possession's more often than not going to be in their favor. But they're scoring a lot of points while also running the ball 70% of the game, if not 80% of the time. And
Yeah,
you even just go to last week against UNC, they scored 41 in a run dominant playbook.
yeah, you're absolutely right. Week one scoring, only 17, but then after that, you know, go on to take on Missouri in week two, scoring 48. Only 22 in week three against Arkansas, but then back up in week four, like you said, North Carolina scoring 41. Um, you know, 128 points on the season. You're absolutely right. They're running the ball a lot, but they're also scoring.
They're making do with the possessions that they get and making sure that they turn into points, whether that's touchdowns or field goals, at the least. So I'm gonna even make that now. That might be the sleeper game of the week for me.
Oh, I 100% agree. That's my sleeper game of the week for sure.
And going on to the second game, or the second game of the Thursday slate, you got 11th ranked Rutgers taking on number 7 Michigan in a clear calm game.
Yeah, Rutgers coming off a loss as well as Michigan coming off a loss. Um, it's an interesting matchup because Michigan just come off a loss against Texas. Rutgers, 2 weeks ago just handedly beat Texas.
I mean,
Um,
they manhandled us. Not
yeah,
gonna lie.
and it makes for an interesting matchup because that's just that's what makes football so great. Is it's any like the phrase says, any given Sunday, or in this case, any given Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, and prospect teams on Friday. Anything can
Any
happen,
game that
and
ends in day.
exactly, and it's just interesting because Rutgers beat Texas, Michigan lost to Texas, but in my opinion, I think Michigan's going to beat Rutgers, and it just makes an interesting triangle, and it's what makes football great to talk about and makes for great talking points, and you know it definitely shakes rankings up because well, I beat you, but you beat me, but we beat them. It's just a lot of pointing fingers, and it's great talking points. But Anyway, my point is, I think Michigan's gonna take this one against Rutgers.
I'm also picking Michigan, and I see Webb's gonna message me and absolutely like dig into me, and flame me for not believing in them. I do think this is probably gonna be a very, very, very close game, if not like over under 4.5, or not over under the spread 4.5. I think it's literally gonna be that close. I do think the weather plays into both of these teams very well. Michigan in an air raid book, but last week ran the ball better and more than they passed the ball. So both these teams confuse me. It's a whole love triangle where Rutgers beat us, but Rutgers lost to Arkansas. Michigan lost to us, but I don't know. This season has been a cluster.
Yeah, it's interesting. Who you have winning this game?
Michigan.
Oh, I didn't catch that if you said that earlier.
Yeah, I said that at the beginning.
Ah, going on to North Carolina versus Arkansas, in which is going to be a great game. Arkansas coming off a win against Rutgers. North Carolina coming off a loss against Florida State. North Carolina, they're now 1-3. You're wanting to start to think that they're in win or not go to playoffs mode, and coming off of three straight losses, um, two of them are pretty good losses, and then you got their most fresh loss against Florida State. That's not looking too good, and you're gonna have to come out and the rest of your schedule isn't looking very easy. You got Arkansas, this next week, and then you got Maryland, who's not going to be easy. You got Texas, who's looking pretty good last week against Michigan. You got Rutgers, who beat Texas. There we go again with the little love triangle there, and then
It's wild.
Michigan, who's also not going to be easy. So you know UNC is definitely in have to win mode almost, and this week is not going to be easy for them. Arkansas is going to look to continue um, their win streak, and I'm going to have to go with UNC here. I think UNC is going to turn things around and get back in the winning column.
I talked to Winley a little bit, just kind of how his mindset, or where his mind's at, being 1-3. He doesn't necessarily think that they're in a must-win territory the rest of the season, because I think they can technically afford one more loss. But then at that point, you're kind of, win out, or uh, playoffs are more than likely not happening. I do think getting a win here against Arkansas would more than well help their case, because I think that would be a very quality win, because Arkansas is, you know, kind of getting hot at the right time of the season, especially as later as we get into the season. I mean, we're halfway through season 8 already, and felt like it just started yesterday.
Yeah, like you said, technically they're not, they can afford one more loss, but at the same time, like you said too, it's middle of the season. You don't want to get all your losses, out of the way by mid-season, and then the rest of the week, the last half, you have to win every single game. Yeah, it's good to have affordable losses in your back pocket, but at the same time, you know you're gonna need to get some wins too. Um, so it's gonna be an interesting matchup. Like you said, Arkansas's looking pretty hot, um, but like I said, I'm gonna stick with my pick. I think UNC is gonna take this one.
I'm also gonna stick with UNC, and I think that might be game of the week.
Yeah, I was between that one, in between three of them really, between North Carolina and Arkansas, um, USC, Miami. I think is gonna be a good one, and then the Rutgers Michigan. But if I had to choose, I would say Rutgers versus Michigan for my pick for game of the week.
I mean, yeah, literally almost all these games, but two are probably can be up there, like which I can see really going either way. This week's gonna be interesting, and also a lot of potential playoff implications this week as well.
But yeah, that was week 5. So interesting to see how these games turn out and if we're eating our words or not. Um,
More than likely, we probably will.
yeah,
It's
we usually
normally
do.
how it goes.
Yeah, it goes back to the point of this is the VGL, and game plans matter a lot, and um, top rosters only get you so far.
Yeah, I mean, look, it was Miami, for instance, best team in the league on paper, but only at 1-3, who was, you know, unanimous preseason ranked one, and now they're all the way but down at 10. So it just shows you anything can happen.
Yeah, but yeah, interesting games coming up, and great episode. Like I said, a quicker episode, and then next week we should be back to our regular schedule.
And we got also can't wait for some of the articles that Mr. Ryan Moreland's going to be coming out with in the coming days. I've been enjoying them personally, reading them and getting some extra insight from someone else in terms of for the league. But thank you everyone for tuning in. Sorry once again for the delay and of episodes. So we just had a lot going on. Been busy. I've been moving. Uh, like my brother said, we'll get right back into it to regularly scheduled programming. And this is the Brotherhood Blitz.